Let us keep enjoying our journey around the 12 worlds. Today, we are visiting the world of Tetras. It looks like a place with a very distinctive architectural style, almost classical, since you can already spot a castle far off in the distance. Pink adores that style. She seems thrilled to visit a world as traditional as Tetras. But Bucky is not on the same wavelength. To him, all that architecture was tacky. "Why are we visiting this dull, flavorless place?" asks the boy, in a tone far more direct than what is recommended on a sightseeing trip. And that infuriates Pink. Bucky really does not appreciate classical art, but his question was not exactly relevant either. Furious, she reminds him that to reach the Needle Tower, they had to go to the world of Doidicus, the 12th world, because only there was there a connection to the tower. And to reach Doidicus, they had to pass through all 12 worlds in order. They were in trios a few days ago, so that is the reason they are in Tetras today. Got it, Bucky? Apparently not, because Pink is still on the warpath. After all, they were only there because of Bucky, and even so, he does not seem grateful by a single millimeter. In fact, he decides to offer his usual words of gratitude. Shut up. Now it was Bucky's turn to explain the situation. The goal of the trip was to obtain a graceful technique for the boy, a technique he needed to conquer the world. Cooperate without reservations, he orders. But Pink wanted no part in a plan that suspicious, while Bucky thinks she is being awfully insolent for a mere servant. It looked like the two of them would keep circling this argument for a good while longer when Kai steps in to try and calm things down. He says all three of them could benefit from this trip, and because of that, they should be friendlier with one another. But his peace offer is cut off, abruptly, by a scream. As GCs, it was their duty to find out what that scream meant. It had come from behind those bushes, and that was exactly where the three of them were heading. And sure enough, it was a job only GCs could handle. A chaos monster was threatening a defenseless young boy. That boy was the one who had screamed, but that had been his last breath of fight, because now he was down on the ground, crying in despair, completely out of action. The monster then stretches out its tongue. The boy can only hope it brushed its teeth at some point. But a pink ball comes flying in, spinning. It was Jibaku. The guardian spirit explodes right in the monster's face. Another job well done on the record. But the truly hilarious part is that the monster is not just defeated. It transforms into a scrawny wolf that looks like a heavy smoker. And then it drops right at the boy's feet. "Kids, this is why smoking is bad for you." And our heroes? Yes. The trio strikes their victory pose, confident and stoic. Bucky explains. That was a kitsune monster with the ability to transform. Pink complains that the world of Tetras has weird monsters. Kai just watches, satisfied to have such reliable companions. Bucky was collecting his guardian spirit, praising it for another job well done, but that little gesture sparked the curiosity of the unknown boy. A guardian spirit being collected by a person could only mean one thing. That spiky-haired boy was a GC. The unknown boy needs to confirm his suspicion, so he asks. Bucky calmly answers. "Yes, I am the GC of Primus, and those two over there are my lackeys." Pink and Kai protest their rankings. Have they been demoted since the last incident? Hypothesis confirmed, and the unknown boy shows very clear signs of satisfaction. So he walks up to Bucky. He had a request, one that apparently could only be made to a GC. Bucky is curious, and the request seems simple. He wanted to become Bucky's disciple. Now that is unexpected. Bucky had not even completed his own training as a GC. Is he really qualified to take on a disciple? We will find out in the next scene. Now we are inside an enormous, luxurious castle. So enormous and luxurious that from outside we can hear Pink's scream of excitement. Excitement and surprise, because not only were they invited to visit that incredible place, they were invited by the owner himself. Pink has a hard time believing a boy that young already owned a place like that. But it was the truth. Pink then decides today was her lucky day. Since she had saved the prince, she could become the princess of that place. But Bucky points out that fairy tales usually tell a different story. And the boy announces his return to his grandfather. Pink gets excited about meeting the boy's relatives. A kind old gentleman appears and says the Count was expecting them. Pink gets even more excited hearing the word Count. But at this point, Pink is getting excited about literally anything. Well, maybe not anything. The Count arrives. It was a pink ball with a big nose and an extravagant mustache, riding a bundle of sticks pretending to be a horse. It was definitely a sacred spirit. Pink's excitement drains away fast. And by now, that excitement does not exist at all. All that is left is disappointment. And now her disappointment turns into fury. She grabs that spirit with pure sadism and asks if handing noble titles to mustached pink balls is a local custom. The Count is outraged at being treated like that. The grandfather is stunned by the girl's wildly disproportionate reaction and tries to argue. His argument was that this was not a mustached pink ball, or rather not only a mustached pink ball, but also the sacred spirit Count Bakuretsu. Bucky then starts putting the pieces together and cracking the mystery. He turns to the boy and states his conclusion. And the boy confirms the suspicion. Yes, he was a GC, just like Bucky. He was D'Artagnan, the apprentice GC of Tetras. He revealed his real status while carrying Count Bakuretsu, his sacred spirit. Bucky protests. He considered that a violation. Whoever heard of someone carrying a sacred spirit without even finishing their training? Seems Bucky conveniently forgot about his own situation, a title he casually inherited from a stranger he had never met before. And he did not even have a technique until 2 chapters ago. But Kai tries to mediate. In the world of Tetras, the sacred spirit, in this case Count Bakuretsu, was passed down by inheritance and stayed inside the family itself, which would explain owning it without the qualification. D'Artagnan's grandfather confirms the point. The full context was that the boy's cousin, who was the previous GC, had recently come of age. Being an adult, he could not be a great child or GC, in case you forgot. Otherwise, he would be a great adult, and that is not in the script. So Bucky understands the situation. But while he was reaching that conclusion, a noise came from the castle corridors. A growl? Bucky wonders, hearing that sound. D'Artagnan goes pale at the noise. He clearly knew what it was, and it was clearly nothing good. The boy then turns to Bucky and asks for his help. It seems it was time for the boys to get to work, for the real reason they were there. The situation was very simple. D'Artagnan was very weak. So weak that his own sacred spirit did not even pay attention to him. Look at Count Bakuretsu sipping his 5 o'clock tea, while the boy was begging right there. D'Artagnan needed training. He needed those GCs to teach him how to become a real GC. But the reaction was not exactly what he had hoped for. Bucky is blunt. What is the point of reaching a goal using other people's power? Kai is more preachy. He says everyone should follow their own path, and D'Artagnan should follow his. And finally, Pink is the most direct of all. This whole thing was just really boring. It seems things were not going the way D'Artagnan expected. But the boy was determined. In one last play, he says he needed their help to become a GC as amazing as that trio. And it seems something changed in our trio because they stop walking and they turn around. Kai loved being called amazing. Pink says she would prefer to be called a pretty teacher, but she seems pretty satisfied with amazing anyway. Bucky, for his part, simply enjoyed the boy recognizing his supremacy. In short, this is a trio easily won over by the weakest flattery imaginable. But if the ends justify the means, then D'Artagnan hit his target with very little effort, almost no effort at all. So let us see how this training goes. My expectations are not high, but let us find out if Bucky and his squad can surprise us. D'Artagnan's first teacher is Kai. Kai introduces himself as the holder of the martial arts license, so his training will be more physical. Fight this ferocious bear, says Kai, as if it were the simplest thing in the world. D'Artagnan, however, has serious doubts about that, because that bear had a certain murderous look in its eyes. But before D'Artagnan could do anything, including run away, the bear quickly hugs him. Not an affectionate hug, but a submission hug. Pink comments that the bear was more ferocious than usual after Kai pulled it out of hibernation just for the training. Bucky simply agrees. That does sound like a dangerous thing to do. The result is D'Artagnan on the floor, knocked out, with a worryingly large pool of blood under him. Even Count Bakuretsu looks concerned, but as the saying goes, no pain, no gain. Let us hope D'Artagnan got a whole lot of gain after all that pain. The instructor of the hour is Pink. Will she do better than Kai? Well, she says her license is psychic, so D'Artagnan must train his sensitivity, okay? And the training seems fairly simple, to be honest. Pink hands him a box. D'Artagnan has to cut one of the two cables inside, red or blue. Oh, and the small detail is that if he cuts the wrong one, that box explodes. But maybe it is better if D'Artagnan does not focus too much on the minor details. D'Artagnan picks up a pair of scissors, stares at the box, and starts sweating cold. Obviously, he was going to get it right on the first try. Obviously not. A huge explosion goes off. Pink scolds D'Artagnan for picking the wrong cable. Kai asks if she maybe overdid it with the gunpowder inside the box. Judging by the size of that blast, I would say overdid it might be an understatement. Finally, it is the turn of the star of the company. Bucky declares that his license is the great universe that expands infinitely. Hold on, does that exist? And also, since when does Bucky have a license? Either way, Bucky says his training will be about developing willpower like a white comet. Whatever that is supposed to mean. How do you do that? Simple again. Run across these flaming, extremely hot stones. Finally, D'Artagnan pushes back. He would get burned out there. Bucky brushes off the complaint. After all, ascetic monks of esotericism used to do this, so why could a GC not do it? Want proof? Bucky calls Kai and asks him to demonstrate how it is done. The GC of Trios promptly answers the call, and he runs straight toward the flames, full of confidence. I really do think D'Artagnan was worried over nothing. Kai was going to clear this challenge without a single problem. Obviously not. Kai is down on the ground, sprawled across the flaming stones, slowly turning into a barbecue. D'Artagnan complains the meat is getting overcooked. Bucky teaches that good children should never imitate bad practices. It is the right lesson from the wrong person. It was becoming clear that things were not going the way D'Artagnan imagined. He starts complaining, crying, saying he could never pull off that kind of madness. Bucky objects. Was there anything strange about that training, really? Bucky gets straight to the point and asks, if he had no talent, why not just quit and let another child be the GC of Tetras? D'Artagnan explains that it was not that easy. According to D'Artagnan, everyone in his family was already past the age of being eligible to be a GC. Only he could still be one. He concludes, only I can be the GC of Tetras. Bucky then says the line of GCs of Tetras had ended with D'Artagnan. The boy complains about those harsh words. Bucky then backs up his point. He points at Count Bakuretsu, saying the spirit was grumbling over there because of D'Artagnan's attitude. Then he asks whether the GC candidate had any talent at all that might help. D'Artagnan tries to remember some talent he had not mentioned yet. Then he remembers. He picks up a sword and grips it with mastery. The trio of GCs look at D'Artagnan's stance and reach a conclusion. The boy must know fencing. But actions speak louder than words. At that exact moment, 3 leaves fall from a nearby tree. D'Artagnan's eyes lock onto his target, and he launches a thrust with total conviction. And the sword pierces all 3 leaves in a single strike. That was certainly not a lucky hit, but pure precision. Pink and Bucky are genuinely impressed by that and praise the boy. Even Count Bakuretsu shows a bit of respect for the feat. D'Artagnan then gives more details about his talent. The truth is, the GCs of Tetras had received the fencing license, and that skill had been taught to every member of D'Artagnan's family. The boy himself had been taught by his father, who, according to him, was a master of fencing, capable of piercing up to 5 leaves in a single strike. But something did not add up. Bucky asks, if his father was such a great swordsman, why was D'Artagnan trying to learn from 3 strangers? The answer is short and blunt. D'Artagnan could not learn from his father anymore because he was already dead. And so that exhausting day comes to an end. It is now night at D'Artagnan's castle. The trio of GCs is having dinner, but D'Artagnan is not with them because he had already gone to bed from exhaustion. While serving the boys, the grandfather gives them a little more of D'Artagnan's story. It had already been 8 years since D'Artagnan lost his mother to illness, and the year before, his father met the same fate. The grandfather explains that, losing both parents at such a young age, there is no way D'Artagnan would not feel sad and lonely, even if he hides that feeling so as not to worry other people. After all, he is a kind boy, the grandfather concludes. Pink then gets interested in the father's story and asks if he had also been a GC. The old man's face lights up with pride as he mentions that D'Artagnan's father was not only a swordsman, but the most powerful swordsman in the entire history of the GCs of Tetras. As a swordsman, he was superb, but as a father, he was extremely strict. D'Artagnan received brutally hard lessons from him, and his father never once showed him a smile or gave him a word of praise. It was a very cold relationship, almost as if they were strangers and not father and son. But then came the day the father died. At the funeral, everyone saw D'Artagnan standing there, serious, showing no emotion at all. Some even whispered that he was indifferent to the whole thing, that he did not care about his father. But that night, the grandfather noticed D'Artagnan had left the house, heading for the cemetery where his father lay. Realizing the boy was gone, the grandfather went out searching and found him sitting at his father's grave. Surprised, the old man asked the boy to come home with him, since it was night already and it was dangerous. But to his surprise, the boy answered, "At home everyone is together, but here my father is all alone. I'm going to stay here and keep him company." Remembering that moment, the grandfather breaks down in tears. After all, that was the unquestionable proof of the boy's good heart. And then Bucky understands. That moment when they first met him, D'Artagnan was on his way back from another visit to his father's grave. Even a full year after his father's death, the boy still repeated the very same routine. With that in mind, it seems Bucky is starting to see D'Artagnan in a whole new light. Let us do a time skip of 1 week now. D'Artagnan keeps training under Bucky's command. This time, the training is fencing. Bucky asks D'Artagnan to perform 3,000 thrusts. The boy nods, no complaints. Kai shows up and comments that the boy has improved a lot in his technique. Bucky says that was only natural, since his family had a gift for fencing. The trio then agrees they did the right thing, focusing the training on the sword. It was better than fighting bears or walking across flaming stones. The risk of death would be noticeably lower this way. And while they were chatting, a noise was heard in the background. Bucky gets even more intrigued by that growl. Pink adds that it has been like this ever since they arrived at the castle, and nobody knows yet what it is. And looking at D'Artagnan's face, it seems he knows exactly what it is. And the boy realizes it was finally time to ask the GCs to come with him down to the castle dungeon. And so they set off to the lowest level of that place, on a walk long enough for the two of them to have a longer conversation. Bucky asks what was down there. D'Artagnan explains they were going to the underground vault, where the sword passed down through the generations of his family was kept. That sword served as the proof of the title of GC of Tetras. Bucky asks if D'Artagnan already considered himself strong enough to claim the sword. Timidly, D'Artagnan denies it. And then, once again, a loud crash echoes through the place. Bucky is startled. He says that growl sounded like it was coming from very close by. D'Artagnan, however, is not surprised at all. It seems he had not told the whole story yet. But now it was time. They had reached a door. D'Artagnan gives a warning. He was about to open it, and the mystery unravels. In the distance, you can see the sword D'Artagnan mentioned, but you can also see a shape standing in front of that sword, an intimidating shadow. The three GCs are stunned by that presence. The answer to where the growling came from seemed clear now. It could only be that monster. But the question that remained was, what kind of monster was that? Pink says she has never seen a monster like it. Kai says he feels a demonic aura coming from that direction. Maybe that aura means the monster was the ghost type. And D'Artagnan finally reveals the full story. That monster had appeared this year, and ever since then, the sword had been out of reach for everyone. The boy then makes the request he should have made from the very beginning. He asks for help to defeat that monster, and Pink explodes. She did not like being dragged into a case that had nothing to do with her, all because of an apprentice GC who could not solve his own problems. But Pink was making a lot of noise. So much noise that the monster ended up noticing them, and the response was immediate. The monster fires a projectile straight at the two bickering youngsters. D'Artagnan and Pink dodge it by a single hair. But the spot where the projectile landed is now caved in. That would hurt quite a lot if it connected. Pink says she was surprised by that sudden attack. D'Artagnan, remembering all that unnecessary shouting from the girl, starts reconsidering some of his life choices. Even so, he was already stuck in that place. with that group of questionable performers. With no alternative, he asks Bucky to do something about that monster. Bucky hears the plea but says there is nothing he can do since he does not even know what that opponent is. Since Pink had gone several chapters without doing anything useful, she decides to use her ultra super duper special move, the Prylive Pink Miracle Bomber. Kai is surprised. He thought that move did not even exist. Bucky still figures it must be just another useless technique. Pink then raises her Sacred Spirit Burnby and begins her attack. An intense beam of light bursts out of the girl and Burnby, hitting that enemy dead on. A blinding flash washes over that monster of darkness, and little by little it becomes easier to see the enemy's true face. In the end, it seems the attack exceeded Kai and Bucky's expectations, since they acknowledge the effectiveness of the Mira Bomb, but Pink hates the lazy way they shortened the name of her technique. I cannot really blame them, since the original name is pretty terrible. But back to what matters. At first, that shape looked like some video game animal. After the Mira Bomb, now it looks like a giant, spiky suit of armor. D'Artagnan sees that and is deeply shocked. It looked like one of those Dragon Quest monsters, but the question that actually matters was still unanswered. In the end, what did that monster want? Kai and Bucky watch the opponent from a distance and look pretty intimidated by the aura that thing was giving off. But of everyone there, the one most rattled by the monster's change of form was D'Artagnan. He was muttering something, curled up in a corner. Bucky asks if he is okay. D'Artagnan points at the forehead of that armor, at a symbol carved there. It was a silver crescent moon. Trembling, D'Artagnan says there is no doubt. That was his family's crest, and therefore, the conclusion he reached is that the armor was his own father. Bucky is stunned by the unexpected turn of events. They had come to that castle to teach a boy how to walk over flaming stones, and now they were about to face the ghost of the boy's dead father, wearing armor that looks like it walked out of a video game. In other words, just another normal Tuesday in that group's life. The armor then gets tired of standing still and launches its own offensive. The chest plate opens up, and 3 balls come firing out. We do not know what those balls are made of, but there seems to be no doubt that getting hit by one of them must hurt a lot. And all 3 fly straight at D'Artagnan, who does not react at all. A look at his face shows tears. The boy was deeply shaken by the possibility of facing his own father in ghost form. But this was not the moment to stand still. Those balls had a target locked in, and they were going to hit the boy dead on. Seeing that, Bucky screams for him to move, but it is useless. There is no response from D'Artagnan. So Bucky breaks into a run. Once again, it will be him who has to take action in a moment of crisis. But actually, no. The first one to reach the boy is the grandfather. Throwing his body in front of the boy, he takes the full hit from those balls, with no defense, with no protection at all. The damage is heavy and the old man goes down. Down on the floor, he is tended to by D'Artagnan. The old man looked badly hurt, but he did not look to be in danger. And then the boy starts to speak, crying. He apologizes for being useless. In his eyes, his own weakness turned his father into a ghost, and that his father was there to punish his son. In a melodramatic gesture, the old man raises his arm and laments that things ended up like this, in a conflict between father and son. Then he says D'Artagnan was going through all this because he put so much pressure on himself to be a GC, and that he was this frustrated because of his lack of progress. So the old man says it is fine if he never becomes a GC. D'Artagnan was a kind boy, and it would be cruel to expect someone like that to spend his childhood fighting monsters. Bucky watched that scene from a distance, but he did not look very moved by that soap opera. It looked like he had something else on his mind. D'Artagnan sees his posture and with a bad feeling asks what he is doing. Bucky does not try to sugarcoat it. That armor had triggered the sensor on Bucky's watch, and that could only mean one thing. That was not a ghost. It was a chaos monster. A chaos monster that had injured a human being. The rules of the GCs left no room for discussion in a case like that. It was Bucky's duty to neutralize the threat, and to do it immediately. The message D'Artagnan feared had been delivered. He immediately stands up and tries to argue. In his eyes, that armor was not a chaos monster. It was his father. And if Bucky eliminated the threat, D'Artagnan believes he would lose his father a second time. Certainly a very tragic outcome. He begs Bucky not to do it, not to attack his father. But Bucky decides not to waste a single word answering the boy's plea. A hard punch lands square on his face. That punch explained Bucky's opinion far better than 1,000 words ever could. Even if the message was understandable, that did not make it any less shocking. Everyone there stares in disbelief at such a disproportionate reaction from the GC of Primas. And then the scolding begins. Bucky tears into D'Artagnan's attitude at the most critical moment of all. Right when his action was most needed, the most he does is kneel down and cry. Bucky concludes, that was not kindness. Quite the opposite. That was just weakness. Bucky points at the grandfather and uses him as the example. The old man was a good person, and it was exactly that goodness that made him risk his own safety to protect the boy. And he did it without hesitating. The conclusion was final. If D'Artagnan really had kindness in him, he should turn it into strength and solve this problem the best way he can. Harsh words, but at least D'Artagnan's face seems to have lost its fear. A brief moment of silence follows. D'Artagnan seemed to be searching for an answer inside himself. Will he manage to reach the right one? Finally, he stands up and wipes away the tears, and he apologizes to his grandfather for getting hurt only because of his weakness. No tears. With a face that shows discomfort but no longer shows weakness, D'Artagnan reaches his answer. In that state, the one suffering the most, there was not the son. It was not the grandfather. It was the father himself. And real kindness would be putting an end to that suffering. D'Artagnan was going to fight, or rather, only he could do it. And finally, the boy makes his move. With a determined leap, he takes his place on the front line of the battle. While the armor monster stands there surprised, trying to figure out what that boy was up to, D'Artagnan keeps running along the enemy's flank. His strategy would become clear a moment later. He was running toward his family's sword to claim it. The armor monster then figures out the plan and does not look willing to let it happen without a fight. The grandfather screams D'Artagnan's name to warn him of the danger closing in. But this time he is down on the floor, and he will not be able to save him if the worst happens. And the worst really was about to happen, because once again the armor monster launches its multiple ball attack. Things were looking complicated for the young GC hopeful, since the attack had him locked as its target. And this time, there was no sign of anyone showing up to save him like before. Will D'Artagnan's career as a GC end before it even begins? But he had already reached his goal. His hand had already closed around the hilt of the sword. With one decisive jump, it was clear that this time he would not take an attack passively, the way he did before. Now, with a determined expression, without a trace of fear or hesitation, gripping the family sword with conviction, he goes on the counterattack. Thrust after thrust flies out, at a speed that to the untrained eye makes it look like the boy is wielding 6 swords at once. Those thrusts pierce the monster's balls one by one, completely canceling the enemy offensive. Seeing its first offensive neutralized by its opponent, the armor monster decides to go for close combat and quickly closes the distance between them. Considering the weight difference between the two opponents, D'Artagnan looked like he was about to fall back into a disadvantage in this duel. But an unexpected ally appears to help the boy. A small pink sphere jumps up and latches onto the tip of his sword. Yes, that pink ball was none other than Count Bakuretsu. He was finally going to lend the boy his strength. Receiving the sacred spirit's support for the very first time, D'Artagnan is moved by the Count's gesture. The Count, for his part, opens a confident smile while trimming his mustache. Maybe he was only waiting for the moment his bearer showed some maturity, so they could finally act as a team. Now, with the pair in sync, maybe the disadvantage in this duel has been flipped. Instead of fear, D'Artagnan feels empathy for his father's suffering. His father, so strong and so proud, reduced to a chaos monster. And he declares that the moment had come to free his father from that suffering. And with one decisive thrust, empowered by the sacred spirit Count Bakuretsu, D'Artagnan unleashes his technique. Landing clean on the armor monster, the cutting damage followed by the sacred explosion seems to have decided the result of that fight. Unexpectedly, another monster emerges from that armor, but instead of looking for a fight, it takes off running. It looked like a familiar monster. That is what Bucky was thinking as he watched it fly off into the distance, fleeing. He checks his GC watch, looking for more information. It seems that thing was a variant of the kitsune they fought at the start of the story. Bucky lays out his theory, that the spirit of D'Artagnan's father had been possessed by the ghost kitsune, and together they materialize that armor monster that caused so much confusion for the group. Kai suspects the Kitsune must have taken advantage of the unresolved state of the father's spirit, who could not let go of this world because he saw his son struggling to become a GC, and that attachment made him an easy opportunity for possession by the monster. Bucky says the reason for the father's attachment to this world was probably much simpler than that. The father could not leave this world without hugging his son one last time. It looks like the worst had passed in that castle, and that means the trio's mission in Tetras was wrapping up, leaving only the goodbyes. After weeks living together and learning so much, Bucky asks them not to be sad about the departure, because they could still meet again once their journey came to an end. The boy agrees and says farewell to his new friends. As they leave, Bucky looks back one last time and says his final words. "See you again, D'Artagnan, GC of Tetras."